I'm Leonard Nimoy. Join me for In Search of
An Argument.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to In Search of an Argument, which you all know because you just heard the opening music, which says In Search of an Argument, and Jim is going to yell at me for saying, but I like to say it because, it's live this way and it's more real. We are doing Jim's rolling his eyes. We are doing a special intermezzo episode of the podcast because today we are recording this on March 1st, and it is International Women's Day. So I thought we'd just start with a quick little check-in. Peg, what's going on?
Hey, not much. Happy to be a woman.
That's good. All right, glad that's on your mind. Jim, what's going on with you?
Just happy to be here, John.
Okay. Try to modulate your voice and keep it at the same volume all the time when you speak. Don't get extra loud. Don't get quiet. Just hold it at the same level. Shelly, what are you thinking about?
I am thinking about my upcoming little trip vacation that I'm going to take this Wednesday to Marco Island, Florida with my sisters. Super excited to escape this environment that I'm in now
Oh, my God.
and get some sun.
Are you driving?
No.
You're flying. Where's
No
Marco
sun.
Island?
Please don't get any sun.
Marco Island is like almost the furthest tip of Florida.
Like Key West?
It's about an hour from, I think that's south. It has to be from Fort Myers.
Okay. So it's
We
in
fly
the
into
Gulf.
Fort Myers.
Neat.
Yep.
Fun. Cool.
They
That'll
turn
be fun.
50.
That's even more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Beth, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm also taking a trip and getting on an airplane on Friday to go surprise a friend. It's her birthday on Friday, and so I've arranged it with her husband, and I'm going to fly up to Providence and see them, and I'm super, super excited, but also have that, like, a little bit of, it's not quite shame, but, like, I don't want to tell a lot of people because,
Yeah.
we're still not really supposed to be doing that. But
So you're announcing it on the
guess when this-
podcast.
I guess this will drop after I'm already there, and our
True.
12 listeners probably know already, so it's
They know to keep their mouth closed.
They know that you
And now-
So
really.
what do you mean you're
it's-
not supposed to be doing that? You aren't supposed to leave your confines because of the state?
I mean, I've been trying to follow. No, it's not. I think all the states are just kind of giving up on trying to restrict us. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those, like, I haven't gotten the shots yet. They haven't gotten the shots yet. I'll be getting on an airplane. They had to feel comfortable with me staying in their house.
Sure.
All that.
Yeah.
So I'll go.
Don't
get
feel
tested
guilty
on
anymore.
Wednesday, but I'm just so excited to, like, leave this little corner bedroom in my house. and
Yeah,
go
but you,
somewhere.
John,
Yeah.
Beth, you have gone to other places before, but you haven't flown. Is that what you're saying? That's the difference?
Right, I haven't flown, and I went to my aunt's house to help her, which was the Lord's work. So if I died, I was going straight to heaven. So it didn't matter.
Shelley,
so
are you
had
concerned
a
at all about?
theological dispensation in that case. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Correct.
Well,
I'm
young
not
Will,
cons-
fan of the podcast and frequent guest, is flying to Arizona this weekend to go to a friend's wedding. So,
Yeah,
Interesting.
How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
you
I was
know,
gonna ask.
when the arrangements were made many months ago, I'm sure that they didn't foresee things would still be in a sort of perilous state. So I get it seemed like a safe bet at the time, but a little nervous. He's going to get tested before he's got to get tested because he's working this week anyway. So, get tested, and he's just got to be careful. I mean, the main thing is, you got to not spend a lot of time around a lot of people unmasked. I mean, that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. Shell?
I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna wear masks, and I've got my hand sanitizer stuff. I did get an email from Southwest that they can't guarantee that the middle seats will be empty, which didn't surprise me because my sister, who's been going there about every other week, has said that the planes have been full for about
Of
2
course
months.
they are. Of
Mhm.
course they are. We're
Yep.
Americans.
Are you guys
Of course
not going
they're
together
full.
so the three of you could sit in one row?
No, we can. We'll all be together, but I think it was more of the fact that the plane will be full rather than a stranger near us. We're all going to sit together.
Sounds
Well,
fun.
Well, yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited that people are getting out. I hate to say, I mean, you got to live, so I'm glad people are living. It's good. Do things. So this episode is about International Women's Day, actually International Women's Month, which starts today. And I'll just disclose the reason what prompted my interest in the subject, which is two things. One is I read an article in the Washington Post that maybe some people saw about how women's participation in the workforce has dropped precipitously during the pandemic, like massively, to the point where Joe Biden has called it a national emergency. And the participation levels are now, of the number of women in the U.S. workforce are now at the level that they were at in 1988. I think it's interesting that we have three women on this podcast, none of whom have stopped working at all, and so we can get. I'm hoping we're going to get some perspectives from that angle. But from my perspective, I think the main reason why most women, according what I'm hearing, is one of the main reasons the women are staying home is to take care of kids and to help them with distance learning as schools are closed or as schools are sticking with distance learning, and so I am not I'm not educating my child who is a year old and is not yet going to school, but I am. There is no question that at least for a significant portion of this pandemic, until very recently in Chicago, one of us, my husband or I, had to stay home because there were no daycare centers that were open, and you had no choice. So that is still that's still variable in Illinois. I don't know about where you guys are, but daycare centers aren't open 100% here even now. So there's a lot of women are staying home to take care of kids, and I feel like I'm feeling their pain in many ways, at least in terms of just the being home and not really having the option to do much else. So that's what prompted my interest in it, and I just kind of wanted to hear what all of you guys were thinking about the that statistic and about maybe what we can do about it. So I mean, just we can just start by going around and hearing first thoughts. What are you thinking about that number, and what does it mean for us, and what does it mean for you? Who wants to go?
I'll go.
Shell.
I think it's not surprising to me actually, because still traditionally the primary responsibility of taking care of the kids, the house, and so forth still falls in on the woman in the house. Uh, Also, sadly, she's usually not the major breadwinner. And when they talk about, okay, we're going to have to cut from a two income family to a single income family, we need to have the primary breadwinner continuing to work. So if you follow the steps, it kind of makes sense. Is it right? I think it's absolutely not right. I would like to think that maybe decisions were made in a collective, but when you get down to brass tacks, it comes down to money and how are we going to support this family and how long is this going to last? Um, and I think, I know from my one sister who has young kids, the other ones are in high school, and could do it online and things. She was going crazy. She just could not really keep up, and she has a part-time job. And her part-time job is
Wow.
very fluid. So she has great flexibility with her job, but she still couldn't do it.
Yeah. Thanks. Who's
And I
next?
just wonder when and it will pick back up.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. I want to talk about both
Okay.
solutions and
Okay.
when we think the trend is going to change, or if we think the trend is going to change. I want to get to that. But
Okay.
just first thoughts.
I'll go next. So women, and this will come out this month with everyone promoting that it's the month we celebrate women. That white women, what we make, I think it's 78 cents per a white man's dollar.
Mhm.
Black women make less, Hispanic women make less than that. They also do it the other way where they'll show, in November, okay, now you finally made what somebody made back then.
Yeah.
And this is just going to hurt that even more. To Shelley's point, the women are the ones who exit the workforce when it's a parent you have to take care of, or a child, or daycare costs almost as much as you're making, because you're, just a whole history of the jobs women used to go into or what was available to them. And so it's a huge, huge issue. And I, I have lots of women friends who are struggling with this, and trying to do the supervision of schooling and their full-time job. I have one friend who had to pull her kid out of school last year because the kid couldn't do remote learning. And I think this is going to have a decades-long impact, sadly, a negative impact on us unless we do some really major policy changes.
Thanks. Peggy, Jim?
Peggy? Peggy?
Is Peggy there? Did we lose
I'm
her?
here. Sorry.
Oh,
Peggy's eating.
Yeah, it's
she had to
interesting.
swallow her food.
Peggy's.
It's true.
She was busted.
Even without video,
Um,
you're still busted, Peg. What are
It
you
is
eating, Peg? What are you enjoying right at the
a
moment?
turkey burger.
Ah.
Ooh, turkey burger sounds good. The big question of the time
Wait a
we're
minute,
recording this
Let
now
Peg
for me is
speak
always,
of when.
should we? I'm letting her swallow her food, Jim. I'm
Thank
being
you.
nice, unlike you, who are putting her on the spot and
Right.
amplifying the fact that she's eating while I'm doing it. I'm trying to save her. I just wanted to. I mean, we're recording at, I guess, 6:30 Eastern time, which is at 5:30 Chicago time, and it's like, I was like, should I eat before or after?
And I
And
tried
what
to
I've
eat before, but it didn't work.
it's hard to schedule things, and I'll tell you, it's even harder. I listen, as Jim talks about all the time. I listen to a lot of fucking podcasts, and um, I can't tell you the number of people who talk about the fact that they're having trouble. Like people who are very successful podcasts where they have like Target advertising on their show, and they're like, I have to record at 5:30 in the morning when my husband's out, so that he doesn't hear me when I don't hear him when I'm recording. Would be when he's on his phone calls in the other room, and like people are doing are really going to a Herculean effort. So Peg, I appreciate you swallowing your turkey burger for us
Thanks.
before the
That's
show.
nice.
Wait, that was a
so-
completely worthless interjection, by the way. What was the
Sure.
point?
I want to do
Sure.
a little
of that?
a
Sure,
sidebar
sure.
convo about Women's Day. I think I've told you guys this story before about when I was living in Uzbekistan. They
Ooh.
really celebrate this day, and we were in our house, and the door, somebody pounded on the door, and there was one of the local members of staff, and she had a chicken for us, and she gave it to us and said, "Happy Women's Day. Here's your chicken."
A live chicken?
No.
Oh.
It was dead, but it was, so we were all like, "Oh wait, what's Women's Day?" I mean, I feel like I've never heard of it prior to 2006. How, or 7. I don't know, how long have we been celebrating that in this country?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, well, it's International Women's Day, so I imagine it's some UN related body that came up with it, not
I feel
necessarily
like
in the
it
US.
was never on my radar prior to that, and now I hear about it every year. Yeah, of course I agree with everything Beth and Shelly have said. When Beth says a decade setback, that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
So I don't really know a whole lot of people in that predicament. Most of my friends with kids, their kids are older now, so they don't need to be home all the time. And I mean, the other side of it is that maybe some of those women are going to like not working, and they're not going to want to go back by choice. It's kind of a interesting thought on that too. I mean, a lot of people are. I can't imagine going back to my office every single day, 8 to 5 ever again. Is that ever gonna? I love
Yeah.
the flexibility. So it's kind of off track, but I'm
No,
thinking
it's right on. I think it's
some
great.
people might choose not to go back if they can.
Yeah. This may have opened up the door. Great, Jim.
Well, of course, there's a difference between people who will work remotely and people exiting the labor force. So the issue that needs to be resolved to greatly reverse this problem is that the schools have to be fully reopened. If the schools are not fully reopened in the fall of 21, which I'd be surprised if they're not, but if they're not fully reopened in the fall of 21, it will be a serious economic and political disaster. Obviously, if they can reopen sooner, that's great, but we're already into March of this year, and the school year usually ends in May or June for most people anyway. So there is, what
Unless you're in
happens this
Australia.
spring? What happens this spring? Well, we're talking about the United States because that's where the statistics you're talking for are from, John, are from the United States. So what happens this year is not unimportant, but if we don't have schools fully reopened by next fall, this is just one of the many aspects of that problem. But I think they probably will be fully reopened by next fall, but we'll see.
Well, so that maybe prompts the next level of the conversation, Jim. Maybe you can just continue with that. So, assuming that that's the case, how quickly are we going to get back to 2018 levels female participation in the workforce?
I mean, that I would suspect that once the schools are fully reopened and once the economy is back to where it is, the question is, this becomes a sub question, and once the schools are reopened, how quickly does the economy bounce back? And that is a unknown, obviously, but there is at least some theory that once the schools are open and once there's a high level of vaccination in the country, that the economy may become roaring back to the point where there are now people worried about inflationary pressure. It's obvious. I think it's premature to do that, but
That's
is
bullshit.
well. I'm just saying. I'm not. I said it was
Beth, wait!
premature.
I want to hear more from Beth on this. I want to hear from Beth on this. Let's get some more
wait a minute,
information
wait,
from
let
Beth.
me finish what I was
Beth, tell
saying.
us about before. Just let's get a side note from Beth, and then we'll come back to you, Jim. Beth, give us away. Why is that bullshit?
We have so much recovery to do in our economy
I agree with you,
before we
Beth.
have to worry about inflation.
I agree with you. I
It
agree with you.
just,
Jim, let her finish,
it's all
please.
these conservatives who don't want us to spend money to try and get the economy back on stable footing. They'd rather give away trillions of dollars on these damn tax cuts. But now when we're actually going to put money into the economy in people's hands, they're like, ooh, inflation. It's bullshit.
Okay. That is true, but there are also some economists. I don't agree that we should be worried about it right now, but there are some economists who are not necessarily partisan who are worried. But again, I agree with you, Beth, that I don't think we should be worried about it right now. We can worry about it when the time comes. But if you get to the level where
It's like Chicken Little, Jim. I mean, they've been, when the economy.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with you.
And the Fed policy
All right, Jim,
has
finish.
managed. All
Okay.
right, sorry.
Jim,
I
finish
agree with
up.
you.
Another episode.
How many times do I have to say I agree with you? I was just pointing out. My point in raising that was simply because there's a strong sense among economists that once you have a level of vaccination that allows particularly schools, but also a lot of other businesses to fully reopen, then the economy will come roaring back. Whether or not that's true, no one knows.
So make a prediction. How quickly? I'm just saying. Just give me a range. Give me a range, Jim.
I
a
think
year
that-
or 20 years?
What is your question? When will we
That
back
there
to
will be.
what?
How
To the-
quickly will the levels of female participation in the workforce return to 2018 levels?
2 years.
2 years. Okay, Beth, what do you say?
I still think it's 8 to 10 years.
Okay.
Okay, Shelly, what do you say?
I'll say 5. I have no basis for
Peggy?
this guess.
No,
None
that's
of
what
us
I like.
do,
This
by
is
the
what it's
way.
great. None of us does.
Yeah.
That's
why,
okay. And
why
I'm
do you
all for
like
it.
this? Why do you like us making predictions that we have no factual basis for?
You mean like us predicting like who's going to win the Time Person of the Year
Okay,
award?
but that is actually
when none of us has ever
that's
worked for
actually
Time.
not a serious question, right?
This
That's
isn't
not a
se- This isn't.
Yeah,
we
the question
can't
of
speculate
you
about
don't think
serious
this is a
things.
serious problem, then why are we talking
We can't
about it?
speculate about serious things the way we speculate about
I think
lighthearted
that's
things. We've
different.
speculated about the economy before, Jim.
We've speculated about it in very narrow range, like what we think the unemployment rate will be a year
Oh dear
from now.
God! And
Okay?
that's not serious.
Everybody thinks the unemployment rate will be lower a year from now than it
Peg,
was in
let's hear
6
from
years.
Peg.
6.
Peg, you say 6
6.
years. All right. Jim, I agree. I think that's all true. But I just want, I do want to
What's
just hear
your
what
guess,
people's
John?
feelings are.
What's your guess?
What people's feelings
John,
are. I think
what
it's
is
gonna.
your
I think it'll
guess?
be. Yeah, I think it'll be 10 to 20 years.
Oh.
I think seriously that we're looking at the what I'm hearing from the economists that I'm hearing on the many podcasts I'm listening to. They're talking about it took 10 years to recover from the Great Recession, and this is way worse.
Yep.
And if you're saying, Jim, that a precursor to women's participation in the workforce is not only schools opening but the economy
Okay.
returning to where it was, I think we have a long way to go. I think that's fine.
Not, first
but
of all, that is
but-
not an
let's talk
accurate
about-
summary of what I said. Okay.
Okay, summarize what
Secondly,
you said.
there is no reputable economist who I have read, and I don't know who you listen to on these ridiculous podcasts. that you
Marketplace on
listen to.
NPR.
Well, there is no reputable economist who compares these two events. One was caused by a natural disaster, i.e., a pandemic. Okay? One was caused
Mhm.
by fundamental issues with the financial system. One is solvable. Once you clean up, once you stop the pandemic, the problem is solved. Untangling the problem with the financial system is far more complicated. Secondly, it's an exaggeration to say that it took 10 years to recover. That's simply not true. Okay? So unless you assume that the vaccines will fail and the pandemic will continue at its current levels permanently or for some continuing number of years, these predictions don't make sense.
Well, so I have a question. So my
And
my
give
next
me the
question is a little bit
name
about
of these reputable economists who made
so-
these claims, because I want to fact check that, because I find that very hard to believe.
Good. So my next question is about International Women's Day in general. I kind of want to hear what you guys think. It's I do think it's interesting, Peg, that you were saying that you haven't really heard about International Women's Day, until recently, or you didn't know about it. And I don't know that I've. I'm sure there's somewhere an International Gay Person's Day that I should probably know about, since that would be my tribe if in fact I'm being forced into some kind of identity politics tribe. Which I may be or may not be. But I guess I'm curious what you guys think about the idea of International Women's Day.
Wait a minute. Isn't
does it
gay
do anything
pride
for us? What do you think?
essentially the same thing as what you're talking about?
It could be. It could be. Pride is.
And in fact, we did an episode.
It's interesting. We don't call it Women's Pride Day.
Okay, but whether we call it something different, we
Well,
did an
a name
episode on
matters,
this
Jim.
podcast about gay pride. Well, okay, but that's a different question, right? There is a gay
Well, my
pride
question
day,
is,
right?
My question is,
And it's
I wanna hear from
recognized
each
in
of our guests.
multiple countries, right?
Yeah, so that's what I want to know. I want to hear from each of our guests
Okay.
about what do they
Again,
think
John,
of what do they
questions
think
should
of
be
International
based on
Women's Day.
factual premises, correct
What
factual
do you think about
premises.
international? I want to know feelings, Jim. I want to hear about feelings.
Okay, that's a different
I'll
thing.
go
But when you
first.
state things as facts, as premises to your feeling questions, they should be correct facts.
What fact did I say wrong?
You said that there is no such thing as
doesn't-
international gay recognition.
I said there probably is a day
No,
that's
that's
called
not what you
International Gay
said.
Person's Day.
John, your words
is,
are
Jim.
recorded.
It is, Jim.
Jim, it is
That's
what
exactly
it
what I
is.
said.
It's
That
acknowledged.
is what he said, Jim.
Okay, but
But
I
I-
think the point is we should move on.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to know what your feelings are. I'm just curious, if you guys think it's I don't know, is it just a Hallmark holiday? Is there significance to it in some I don't know, meaningful sense of moving the world forward and making things better, or is it is it concrete and real, and it kind of highlights issues that maybe don't get highlighted? I don't know. I'm curious what you think of the idea of the day and the month.
It does nothing for me. I don't feel like it moves things forward. I think it's sort of like a lame attempt at, oh, women, here you go. Kind of like Black History Month. Like, why do we have to have these specific time points set aside for, because the rest of the 11 months are for white males. So I find it to be a not interesting. Doesn't make me feel special.
Okay.
I didn't get a gift.
But
I will
Peg,
send you a
Peg,
six-pack of beer.
you're already, as you
The date's
yourself
not over
said on our last podcast, the perfect mix already. So what gift could anyone possibly give you that would be appropriate?
Beth, you said you were going to go.
Yeah, so I agree with Peg on the sense of being an American white woman doesn't mean anything to me. Nobody, nobody's buying me flowers or beer or taking me to dinner because woohoo, it's, National Women's Month. But I was in Asia in 2000 through 2002, so I got to participate in 2 years of them celebrating it, once in Thailand and once in Cambodia. And what I found interesting was that they had in Cambodia, which is got so many problems, they had this really terrific female leader. She wasn't the minister of labor, but maybe is one of those like really super broad, let's give her everything no one else cares about portfolios. But she was a great speaker. The women were so excited that this day was about them, and the same in Thailand. Like we all wore matching t-shirts from the office and went to the march, and they really saw it as kind of like how you see May 1st, International Solidarity Day. This was a big deal to them. So I've seen, like, as an American woman, it's yeah, it's that token month, like, oh yeah, we just had our, the shortest month of the years for blacks, and now we'll add the women next. But I've had different experiences overseas with it.
Great. Thanks. Shelly.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything for me. I think it's also just kind of a nod. Um, but I also feel like if they didn't do it, then there would be an uprising or a desire to have it done. So it's like, do you want it, and what's the purpose? Do you don't want it, and why? And why do you not want? Like, it doesn't. What is it going to do? And maybe the answer is there isn't anything that it needs to do, but it just gives this flash in time recognition that there have been great women in history internationally. And it did. I must say, it caused me, when Alexa told me about it today, I
Another great
went
woman in
on.
history, Alexa, by the way, but that's another story.
I went on and scanned. So they have, in Google, artists, women artists, or inventors, and they have them by category. So it was interesting it forced me to do something that I wouldn't do ordinarily if I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah, thanks. Great. Jim.
Yeah, well, I'm not the right person to ask about this. I mean, obviously, I think it's fine that they have it, but what it means is, it's not. I'm not a woman. Just like I wouldn't feel comfortable critiquing Black History Month because I'm not a person of color. So
Right.
I want to say, I think, it certainly doesn't bother me, and I certainly think it's good that it to the extent it provides an opportunity for people to learn something or to feel honored or something about it. But obviously, it doesn't solve, quote, these problems by having this month.
So the organization, the UN branch that kind of has a website about International Women's Day, talks about the three goals or the three mission elements of International Women's Day, which is to celebrate women's achievements, increase women's visibility, and call out inequality. And I'm a little bit curious how you guys, where you come down on that. Based on what you've said, I think I kind of know where you are. But if you haven't addressed one of those three, do you see the day or the month or the potential of the day or the month for achieving or even beginning to achieve any of those mission ideas happening? And again, they're celebrate achievements, increase visibility, and call it inequality.
Well, to Shelley's point, they definitely, celebrate. I mean, Alexa, it's funny. I was just thinking, oh, it's Alexa and Siri. It's two women who are answering all your questions and providing information. And the Cambodian, I don't think it's a Cambodian saying, but the minister would say women hold up half the sky, meaning that we're half the population. We should be equally represented. And the inequalities, I think we're just going to be fighting this for so long. I mean, I've been lucky because most of my adult life I've worked in union organizations. So all our pay is based on the job. It doesn't matter whether I have a college degree or I don't have a college degree. If I have this job, I get paid this much, the same as Jim would get paid. So but I have so many female friends who don't know how to negotiate for themselves, and I try to help them, or they find out that, when they came in, they made $20,000 less than the last person who had the job. And so I think the inequality piece, we can publish as many reports as we want to. Where does it get us? It's like, how do we get a report into changing policy? And I think that's what you're hoping to get to, in the sense of, how do we fix this broken system?
Yeah, I would like to know how having a month that looks at women changes inequality. Like it's just like highlighting, to me anyway, it's like highlighting, look at these amazing women who have done unbelievable things in many situations that men have not done. And they're recognized. But how, and that's what I see as the biggest impact of this. But I would like to understand how that might get us more equal, recognition, job, pay, whatever that might be. And I don't see that connecting. So I'm a little confused by the UN's, that third criteria that you mentioned.
Peg?
What's the question?
The question is, of the three missions of the International Women's Day, celebrate women's achievements, increase visibility, and call out inequality. Do you think that it's accomplishing or can accomplish any one of those three?
I mean, I guess it could call out inequality. That's easy enough to do. I don't think it can. Besides calling it out, I don't know what it can do.
Well, maybe I should have asked, do you think that's a valid, those are good missions? Do you think those are reasonable missions? Because maybe that's the underlying, I
think
question I didn't ask.
That's decent. I mean, why not do those three things? If you can do it, that's a whole nother story. But it's good to have goals, and it's good to aim high. For me, which we're not necessarily talking about, but my job is stereotypically a woman's job. So I haven't ever once felt like, oh, a man who's a nurse is getting paid more than me. Maybe he is, but I never have even thought that was an issue. I'd be surprised if it was an issue.
I bet they are. I bet.
You think?
Uh-huh.
I just feel like a nurse is a nurse. I mean, and they put the salaries right on the job postings, and interesting.
Well, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says 82 cents to every dollar for
it was 78
women.
cents,
Is where women are.
78.
What is it? You're 78.
78
Okay.
cents, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay. It was 29. The number I looked at was 2019 from them, but I know the Center for American Progress had a much more comprehensive list, including international differences of income, and I thought, but I mean, those statistics are interesting because I rarely meet an individual person who is the statistic, right? And that's, I think, a lot of what Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to argue about on this, or used to talk about in some of the decisions that she wrote in the Supreme Court. I think there's a lot of evidence that it is lower. How it plays out, Peg, I'm not exactly sure in all cases, because like Beth says, especially in union contract situation, the contract is the contract. It's very clearly written out, and there's not a lot of room. There's no room for wiggle room. So that what it says is what's happening. But let me ask a little bit more. Jim, did you want to chime in on that?
No,
Or
go.
Good. So let me ask you about internationalism a little bit, because as Jim mentioned, the statistics I started with were mostly U.S. I actually saw the statistics from the Center for American Progress that listed kind of international inequities, which are much more severe than in the U.S. of women and men, between women and men earnings. But I guess I am wondering what the significance is of this. How much you guys think the significance of this, as Beth said, really rests in an international setting versus in a U.S. setting, and how important it is for us to be creating, I don't know, for the day to be inspiring people to, I don't know, accomplish these missions internationally versus only in the U.S. I mean, I do think it's very interesting that both Peggy and Beth's two of their most powerful examples of the day's significance were not from the U.S. And I guess I'm wondering what I don't know how you guys think about, whether you even do think about the U.S. when you're thinking about this, or if you think internationally.
I think more international just because of my experience. And I've never, like I said, I had never even heard of it before I went overseas. And I certainly don't do anything about it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say just the opposite, sadly, just because I live here and I work here, and
Yeah.
the people I know and I'm the closest to live here. And maybe that's a very elitist American way of thinking, but that's the first thing that pops into my mind versus the larger international community, which is sad, but that's how I think.
Yeah, and I
Well, let me build on
definitely,
that. Oh, Beth, go ahead.
yeah, I definitely, like I think about it, when I'm thinking about it, it's more a U.S. perspective. But the work I did in Cambodia was with female garment workers, and 90% of the garment industry was female workers, very specifically to get people who weren't going to fight back and form unions. And so I'm reminded of that every March 1st about the struggles of women around the world. But also on your looking at statistics, and this kind of gets into how we could get better. If you look at, a place like Sweden or, any of the sort of Nordic countries or other parts of Europe, I mean, they have just such a strong social safety net and programs that allow women to take a year maternity leave and get back into the workforce and provide proper early childhood education and well-being, and so there are so many things we could aim for to make it better here.
We have as a I mean, and maybe what we started the conversation with, of you guys saying that, a few of you saying that women are staying home because of the traditional women's roles of staying home, and I think that's unquestionably true, and that's a little disheartening to me, because as a gay man, I'm always thinking about, well, we don't, first of all, we're negotiating that. I don't have any family pressure or friend pressure or social pressure to do a specific thing, because there are no roles for us. So we're kind of inventing it, but I'm curious, but I guess I'm a little bit surprised that the potential for solutions might not be, the solution, the best solution might not be a completely egalitarian world where men stayed home during the next pandemic just as much as women did.
Well, it would be better not to have any more pandemics if we're talking about solutions, like in that sense. Look, Like almost every serious problem, the problem of the fact that women don't receive equal treatment or equal respect or whatever, and they don't receive equal treatment or equal respect, and you can add several other things to that, is a problem that is a problem both of government policy, because there's a role governments can play in it, but it's also a problem of social change and attitudes. Okay. So to Shelley's point, when she said earlier, and I'm sure one of the factors in two-income marriages is if the decision is made is that one person has to stay home and take care of the kids, there's a strong argument, irrespective of any ideological goals, of saying that the person who earns less money on the outside is the one who stays home. And that, of course, goes back to this point, whether it's 78 cents on a dollar, 82 cents on a dollar, clearly women don't make as much money as men. And there are a lot of reasons for that. None of them are good reasons. And those are things that have to be addressed. But even if you have much better government policies than you do currently in the United States, and perhaps there's an opportunity now to enact some of those policies. Uh, even though the Democrats have a thin margins, they should be pushing to get enacted what they can enact during this opportunity. But even if you enact those policies, that alone isn't going to wipe away the problem, just as government action alone won't stop discrimination or unequal treatment against people of color. That requires societal change too, and the two can go hand in hand, and we shouldn't dismiss one or the other. They both are important. And it's also true that we should not overlook the fact we are very far from living in a world where equality is a given, and we have achieved it. But we're also very far from the world that I grew up in terms of opportunities for women. So we've made progress. We haven't made nearly enough progress. And how to keep moving that ball forward. And look, if you're a woman or if you're a person of color, it's not easy to hear that, and I wouldn't, if I were a woman or a person of color, I wouldn't accept that, and they shouldn't accept it. But the reality is that we have to keep pushing the ball forward in both terms of societal attitudes and in terms of changing government policies. But there is no simple solution to this.
Well, yeah, so for sure. So to that, maybe I'll shift gears a little bit before I get to, if anyone wants to chime in with any hard solutions, that'd be great. But I always thought I'd maybe shift gears a little bit and ask about if any of you have any particular women who you look to as voices for speaking about women's issues or writing about women's issues. Any particular female authors that you think are particularly important for you as in what you listen to or think about, or maybe speakers or voices that you're hearing, or maybe even entertainers. I last night watched Knives Out on Amazon, the movie, which was pretty good. But before that, my sister was putting on a bunch of former Kennedy Center. What does the Kennedy Center do? Those annual awards where they have one performer, and she put on a bunch by the one for Cher and the one for Kristen Chenoweth, and I was like, I love this show, and I was enjoying it. So I was so entertainers would be fine too. But are there any
Golden Globes.
particular
I think it was the Golden Globes.
entertainers or writers who you think of as winners? What, shall?
I think it was the Golden Globes. Is that what you're talking about?
No. We were watching old YouTube videos in preparation for Knives
Got
Out.
it.
I have no live television in my life, so this is it was a rare occasion that I turned on a screen that we could all watch together. But it was fun. But anyway, I'm curious about any writers or voices that you guys think are particularly important for you for women's issues.
Like Cher, is that what you meant? Is example of Cher was your example?
Yeah. Jim, are you going to be disparaging towards Cher? You better be careful.
This isn't a writer or I guess she was. Actually, I secretly have always admired Amelia Earhart. And it was mostly because I think she was this huge adventurer. She was a risk taker. She did write books, but the one thing that she did was start this group for training for female pilots. And, back in the, I don't know, 1930s, I guess, that was like extremely ahead of her time. And so I've always admired her in that respect. Cut her own cloth.
Great. I love it.
Yes,
That's a good one. I don't really have one. I mean, right now I'm on this Dolly Parton kick, and I find her to be interesting.
Well, she solved the pandemic.
Yes, she did.
How did she do that?
She funded the research that got to the vaccine.
Oh,
If
I
it wasn't for her,
She
we
was
wouldn't
a-
have a vaccine.
Well, that may be a bit of an overstatement, but yes, she did contribute a lot of money.
But I'm fine with crediting her with that.
Me too.
solved the pandemic.
What are you into about Dolly?
Oh, I just find her story pretty interesting, and
Which part of it?
just all of it. Like she started off the classic living in the holler, poor as dirt. They made soup out of rocks. And now she's this gajillionaire, and she just owns her look, and she changed the music industry, I think, for a lot of women. She stood up to that guy, Porter Wagner, eventually, she doesn't.
That's who she used to partner with when she was first started in music. He was an older, more established guy, and he was. It was very common in those days, at least for country music stars, for women and men to be put in these partnerships. And she was sort of in a partnership with Porter Wagner. And he apparently,
Yeah, but
he
not really a
apparently,
partner,
well, let me
'cause
put it
he
this
was
way: he apparently was a real asshole. So
Yeah,
that's
he
the-
totally manipulated her, and
But again, I'll
Um,
bet that's not the only case where that happened. So, but yeah.
right,
right.
no,
Yeah.
and she finally stood up to him, and
Yeah.
it was her that when she went off on her own and
Yeah.
went to the record company.
She's a far bigger
say,
star than Porter Wagner ever
Yeah,
was.
and
so.
she said, "I know you guys are going to be. I know you're worried about me without Porter Wagner, but I promise you, I'll work hard." And they all were like, "No, it's you we're interested in, not him." I mean, she's just even the way
great.
she talks about sex workers, she doesn't judge. She doesn't judge people, and she gets judged all the time, and it doesn't let her affect her. Like, she makes jokes about how she looks, which I think is a great way for her to handle it if that's the way she wants to look.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that she's a bit of an inspiration for musicians, especially country musicians. I mean, if you listen to young women now who are country musicians like Brandi Carlile and Miranda Lambert, and they all just think Dolly is a badass, and I think they're right. So, but that's not. I don't know. I don't really have one off the top of my
I
head
like it.
besides Dolly. I'd have to think about it.
It's it's a pretty comprehensive non-one, but
yeah,
it's great.
that's
Thanks,
a
Peg.
good one, Peg. Don't minimize it one bit.
Yeah.
And make sure that Ted cues in a Dolly song for this episode.
Yeah, we have to find one. Yeah. Well, if the YouTube video goes as well as we want, well, if we put the this up on YouTube, we'll have videos playing in the background.
No,
related
we can't do that
ironically to what
unless we're
talking
actually
about.
talking about the song. But that's
I actually
another
did a lot
story.
of research into this.
And
You
you know,
can do
she's
it. It's interesting.
extremely smart businesswoman as well, and extremely
Cool.
talented. And she has written over 3,000 songs. And when Elvis wanted to sing her song, "I Will Always Love You," and he wanted to own it, she said, "No, sorry." And she was devastated and so sad because everybody said, "You're nuts. Elvis wants to sing your song." And it was the wisest move she ever made.
It's great.
Still writing checks because of Whitney's version.
Yeah.
She recorded it twice, and it was number one twice from her recording. And then when Whitney recorded it, it was number one again. So I don't know how common that is to have one song be at the top of the charts 3 times.
Wow.
Jim can probably
Jim would
tell
probably
us.
know.
Yeah.
It is uncommon.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Jim, Beth, who wants to go next?
Well, Beth
So
should
I'll go next. I'm going to answer it a little differently because because as you started the question, somebody popped into my head, and then you finished it, and I was like, oh, that's not what he asked. But I just won't answer what you asked. So my Aunt Kathy, she's the one who I went to help her get ready to move, but she teaches or taught Irish history, and she was denied tenure at her university, and this would have been, I guess, late 60s, early 70s, and she sued and she got her tenure awarded, and she was involved in her union, and her specialty is the Troubles in Ireland, but specifically the role of women in trying to bridge the divide in Ireland. And so I just grew up hearing all these inspiring stories, and when I've gone to Ireland, I've met some of these female leaders. And my dad, I'm the oldest, and then there's my sister, and then my three brothers. And my dad had no freaking idea what to do with girls. So he just raised my sister and I like we were boys. So he taught us everything. Like, I can change a tire, I can paint a room, I can, change out a light fixture.
Ride a bike.
It just ride a
Swim.
bike, swim.
Go outside.
So
Go out
I
on a
just
bike.
grew up thinking I could do whatever I wanted,
Yeah,
and
that's great.
and it's interesting because also, again, I don't know how much of this is always working in a union environment or about how I was raised, but Jim will tell you I could sit in lots of meetings and not say a word because if it's already been said, why say it again? But if something had to be said, I never felt like, oh, they don't want to hear from me. So I think, yes, there's lots of like, I only will go to female doctors. I try to be careful, like, how I spend my money. I have a female financial planner. I try to choose things that way and support women that way. But I think my Aunt Kathy, I have to say, is like on my top list of who I admire and what gave me confidence to be the pushy broad that I am.
I love it. I love
do
it.
too.
Thanks,
That's awesome.
Jim.
So just for clarification, so Dolly Parton's version of the song reached #1 twice on the Hot Country 100, not the overall Hot 100. But that is still a very rare thing. The only song that's ever done that on the overall Hot 100, the one that is usually referred to, is Chubby Checker's recording of The Twist that twice went to #1. But it's pretty rare, even on the Hot Country chart, for that song to have done that. Whitney Houston's version was #1 for 14 weeks, which is extraordinary on the Hot 100 chart. So that's pretty popular. So I would say there are three women whose voices are particularly important and inspirational to me, and they are Beth Shannon, Shelly Cummings, and Peggy Bennett.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Jim's running for Senate.
Very nice.
Aw, Jim, that's sweet.
Why, Jim?
Because I listen to their voices and I respect their opinions, and occasionally they listen to me. Sometimes, actually, they listen to me more than they want to. How about that? So they're forced to listen to me more than they want to.
Nice. For me,
There are many other women that I respect too. So, but I will
I'm
name
sure.
those three.
For me, I actually, the first thing that popped in my mind, what I was thinking of, and Beth, by the way, I did purposely kind of throw out a whole bunch of different ideas of how the question could be answered to keep a wide aperture, hoping I would get you to say something interesting. And I thought it was great. So I love where you went with it. For me, the first thing I thought of when I kind of just gave this a momentary thought before we started the podcast was I've liked working with and for women. So I'd say all the women that I've worked for and with, for some reason. And what's interesting is especially the women I've worked for, I definitely have preferred working for women. And the women I've worked for would hate that I ever said that. They would they would be near borderline outraged that I'd like somehow put their sex as a reason why I might like them, and I don't know that it is why, but when I look at the correlation's very high. So it's kind of for me, it has something to do with work and how we interact at work and how we get along with each other at work. Well, let me just ask as we're heading out. Let me ask one last question. The way I like to frame things. I picture this podcast and our kind of conversations going out to young people because I was a teacher for a very long time, and I still think in those terms, and I think about young people and how they how they're perceiving things. So I'm wondering if you could look in your crystal ball and think, what do you think for a young woman today, maybe somebody who's 1 year old or somebody who's just been born, what do you think the issues that are going to be facing them when they're your age will be?
Oh my God. I don't
Well,
know.
I hope it's none of the issues we're facing now.
Yeah.
Not a
Okay,
single
that's
one.
fair. That is fair. Any advice for the or hopes, wishes for the youngest women that are out there?
That's a big question.
I mean, mine would be don't set limits. I mean, to Beth's comment, you can do anything you put your mind to, regardless of being male or female. You should do it. Don't feel you are limited um, by being female in any regard, in anything you want to do.
Unless you want to be a male stripper.
Ah, you can get pins to put on your body to make you look like a male. There's
Thanks, Peg.
adaptations that happen.
Okay, others?
Well,
I don't know. Somehow women need to have really solid self-esteem. And I don't know how to advise somebody to have one, but that's just key to feeling like you can do all those things, uh, to feel confident to speak up. I don't know. I think the three of us do. Um, I think sometimes people look at my career choice and think, oh, what a woman's thing, but it's it's what you make of it, and it's been the most incredible career. I think I would do it all over again if I could. Yeah, take risks, be confident, love yourself. I do think that women are going to be facing a lot of the same issues. Young women or young girls are going to be faced a lot of the same issues that we still face, that people still faced in the 60s, that they still faced in this whole right to choose, equal pay. I think those things are not going away anytime soon. Sorry, my dogs are barking. I'm muting.
I think,
Beth, Jim?
yeah, I think I've definitely seen progress in messaging to young girls and tweens on, even like the Run Like a Girl campaign or feel confident to speak up in class and just more kind of addressing things in the moment. Um, and just calling people out on language. Like girls are supposed to be nice. Well, everyone should be nice. Like, why is it the girl's job to be nice? So I do see these little, movements where I think we are making progress. And for my friends and my sister who has a 12-year-old daughter, we talk about this a lot. Like, okay,
Hmm.
so how is her confidence? What's going on? Now, interestingly, she has a twin brother and she does better in school than he does in a lot of subjects. And so she's not getting it that way. But like, when does it become where she loses that confidence? And so I think people are much more aware of it now. Um, and just I've done it at work too. If I see a woman getting treated differently than a guy, like if the woman's asked to go make copies, I'm like, wait a minute, Keith's got legs, he can go do it. So I think, it's on all of us to kind of speak up and capture it in the moment if we feel we safely can. But I agree that it's just structurally our society, Sadly, I think 50 years from now, there's going to be, people are going to queue up this podcast and talk about, if things changed or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
John,
Jim?
do you have any, or anybody else have any final thoughts before we close? I close out.
Yeah. Did you have any?
No,
Did you have
I'm
a
gonna do
comment
the
on that?
closing, so I'm ready whenever
Oh,
you're ready.
okay. No. Great, Jim. I'm glad.
Anybody
Take
else?
us home.
Final thoughts?
No, I hope I loved everything you guys said.
Excellent.
No, and
Thanks.
I know Jim's trying to get us off, but one final thought for John. I have friends whose daughter's now 14, and so one of the dads opted out of the workforce for the first couple of years to take care of their daughter and faced so many of the things you talked about, and basically called all his friends who were moms and his sister and apologized for never understanding fully what women traditionally go through. Like, his husband would come home and say, "Did you get the dry cleaning?" And he's like, "Are you freaking kidding me? The
Oh,
baby
yeah.
vomited 6 times." So
Yeah.
there are
Yeah.
others out there, and I can connect you if you want to see some future hope.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I definitely am. I definitely am not only sympathetic, but I kind of in a policy standpoint. I'm like, I can't believe we can't, as this country that considers itself so great, get to the point where we don't give some parent a year off paid so that they can be home with the kid, because there's nothing more important.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree.
All
Hear, hear.
right. Very good. Thank you, John. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Shelly. Before we close, let me just give you a couple of statistics. The women's participation in the U.S. labor force has gone down by 2.4%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Male participation in the workforce has gone down 1.9%. But among women with young children, their participation has gone down 3.8% as opposed to men's, which is also around 1.9. So clearly, the vector, as John would like to say on these things, is the presence of children is driving the larger part of the women's greater non-participation in the workforce. Another part of that we probably should recognize is that women are also disproportionately in some of the low-paid jobs, which goes back to these old other things, and a lot of those jobs have gone away or have been severely curtailed because of the pandemic. Any event, thank you for joining us for this. Thanks to our regular editor, Justin Mullins. Thanks to Ted Enley for the music. Thanks to Mary Heintz for overall support and help. Thank you to all our listeners. Please provide a comment any way that you can and tell anyone that you can about this episode. This was not our expected to be next episode. Our next episode, which will be out in approximately a week, will be our look at the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic. And we'll be going back and looking at what we said about it a year ago, back when we were still called Two Guys in Search of Something. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you.